For the next little while, we're going to talk now about very specific methods of purchasing. There are three that we will talk about, and these three really represent 99% of the way in which purchasing is done around the world. The first method is an informal method of purchasing. The second is a formal method. And then the third is a prime vendor approach. Now again, I have taken this information from your textbook, and I have substituted the term that they have used in the textbook and substituted the term prime vendor, because prime vendor is really the term that is used today in the industry rather than what is in the book. Because in the book they're talking about a term that says that you're buying all of your product from a particular vendor. And that's really what prime vendors are, but I thought it would be better to use this term of prime vendor. So, the first type that we talked about is the informal approach. This is going to be used only when you have very small quantities of food that you have not been able to get from your prime vendor or from the vendor that you normally work with. Low-cost items, things that you might find at a market, but it may also involve an approach that you take to purchasing. I sometimes use, and others use, the term cherry picking. Do you like to pick cherries? That's the approach that's taken in purchasing as an informal method. The cherry picking approach is going to have the purchaser from the food service call the individual vendors and ask of the list of items that they want, what is your price on this item today? And so you record then what their price is. So you do all of the comparison, and then you go back and call them again and say, I'll take a case of this and 3 cases of this other thing. And then you call the other vendor and you tell them the number of cases that you want of each of the items. Then you have 3 vendors who are delivering product. You've got 3 vendors that you've got to check in what has been purchased, and not to say anything about all the time that has been spent in evaluating all of the prices. So the informal approach is really not a good way to do purchasing in the main approach to purchasing. Probably the most important thing is here we have an urgent or an immediate need for the product. It is not something that we need next week. It's something that we did not get and we need it today. So you can pretty well forget the informal approach to purchasing, because it's just not a cost-effective method of purchasing. The second approach is that of a formal process of purchasing. And the approach that is taken here is that your entire grocery list, that is everything that you need to buy, over the next 3, 6, 12 months, is sent to vendors in the area, and you get from them their cost of each of those items. And so you can then take a more informal approach to this and say, I would like for you to bid then on these items that tend to be more cost effective for me. And then other vendors may get some requests for a bid as well. But specifically, what we are doing is looking at the bottom line of our market basket or our grocery list, and which company is going to give us the lowest possible price. This is done very periodically. It is not done daily, it's not done weekly, but it may be done quarterly 1 quarter, 2 quarter, a year, whatever. Typically, I would prefer, if I were bidding, using the bidding process, to make it as long a period as time, a year or more, because there is just a lot of work involved in going out to bid. The government, many governments require this as an approach to purchasing, the bid process. The approach that I particularly like, and the approach that I have almost consistently used throughout my career, is the concept of prime vendor. And the process begins just exactly the same as we did for the formal bid process. We give our grocery list to the vendors that we're inviting to participate with us in purchasing and supplying, and we find that vendor that is going to give us the lowest possible price. And so we're going to stay with that vendor and develop a relationship with that vendor. I'd like to go backwards for just a few minutes, back to Monday. We were talking about total quality management. One of the aspects of total quality management that we did not talk about is the fact that your organization and the vendors from whom you are purchasing, because of their concern for quality and because of our concern for quality, can intermesh. And we can take on an association between the two organizations that says, that what is good for me and my organization is going to be good for the vendor. What's good for the vendor is going to be good for us. And so we establish a virtual partnership between the purchaser and the vendor. And so in a prime vendor concept, it's very difficult to tell the boundary between the organization and the vendor. And that is, I think, a very, very good thing. In our hospital food service, we have a section that is responsible for special event meals. And because of the nature of the space that they occupy, they will rent tables and chairs. They will rent linen, they will rent china, flatware, everything that's needed, even the decorations. And so the company that supplies these goods, the tablecloths, the linen and the china and decorations, they will come and they will actually set up the room in the way that it should be. And so you don't know if those people are employees of the decorating company or if they are employees of the food service, because they work together so well. And so I think that is an ideal situation for this prime vendor concept, because whatever is good for one is going to be good for the other. And it is to your advantage to maintain that relationship. So, we've talked about the first step of selecting the vendor, and that is what vendor is going to give us the lowest possible price for our market basket. I would like to suggest that just the cost of the food is not enough to use in evaluating the total cost, because we need to look at some other things. In terms of that supplier or that vendor needs to be purchased on the basis of price, yes, but also in terms of the value-added services that they provide. The prime vendor that we use at Loma Linda has on several occasions brought in a special team to the department and has evaluated the productivity of the patient tray line and of some of the other areas, completely free to the department, but it is a value-added service that the vendor provides from a nationwide point of view. Anybody can do it who is their customer. And so I think that's a very, very good thing. Also, do you have coupons? Do you know what I mean by a coupon? I think they're everywhere. So at home, you get coupons and you bring them to the store and get some layoff of whatever you're purchasing. The same happens in quantity food production. When you buy products, you can get a discount based upon a promotion that the manufacturer may be giving. And so a vendor, if they are intelligent, will pass on that savings to the purchaser, to the organization, so that they are paying a lower price. Just exactly the same way that happens at home, it's happening at the institutional level, with one exception, and that is you don't need to give them the coupon. The coupon is automatic, and so the automatic cost savings comes to you as a result of your purchasing. There also can be a discount on the cost of your food based upon timely payment of your account. And so if you pay the account within 10 days, you get a 2.5% reduction in terms of the cost. That is a significant amount of money, because if you're purchasing millions of food value every year, 2.5% is going to be good. Now, it may not always be 2.5%, it may be another percent, but still, it's going to be a good value for you to do that. Our vendor also will give us a percentage discount based upon when we receive the order. We receive our order at 5 a.m., Monday through Friday. This means, from the point of view of the vendor, that they can load our delivery truck beginning at about midnight, and by 3 o'clock in the morning, that truck is out on the highways coming to Loma Linda to deliver our food products. Our delivery on a daily basis is almost one full major trailer from a trucking company. So it's a lot of money that is spent each day in terms of food. And so by accepting early morning deliveries, that truck then can go back to the warehouse and reload and deliver to restaurants and other food services that want their deliveries later in the day. So this means that the company, the vendor, does not have to buy another truck. They make use of the resources that they have. So I think that's a very, very good thing as well, in terms of ways in which we can reduce our food cost by changes that we can make in the way that we do business. Let's review briefly the ordering process. The first thing that we need to do is to recognize the fact that we need product. And so this product then is going to appear on our purchase order. Now, another thing that I need to learn here is the way in which purchases are handled in a hospital setting, for example. But in our setting, the order is given via the internet. So when we place an order for a particular number of cases, we get an immediate feedback from the vendor saying that amount of cases has been reserved for us. There will not be any substitutions. Substitutions of product is a major problem where you don't have this computer-based ordering system. So they will the vendor can substitute anything that they want or not send it to you at all. But by knowing that you have the product, it gives peace of mind. If there is not enough product that they have that your order will not be complete, you have the option then of choosing the item that you want to have substituted. It's not going to be done for you. You've got to make that decision. But in the final analysis, we're going to have a purchase order, which is communication to the vendor for everything that we need for this delivery. We'll also have a purchase order number, and that will be associated with that, and will also cross-reference with the invoice. And the invoice then is the vendor's communication to us saying, this is what we have sent to you, and this is the current price for the product. And so when the vendor generates this invoice, we're going to receive the product along with the invoice, but we're going to use the purchase order as the basis for comparing what we have received to make certain we received what we ordered. Then we will compare the purchase order with the invoice to make certain that we are, again, have gotten what we've ordered and what the price was. There are some games that some vendors will play. And this game is deception, falsification. And so what they do is we'll work with the receiver at my organization, your organization, and they say, you know, if you sign saying that you received it, but I don't deliver it, I don't actually deliver it, it still stays on my truck. I have a friend who will buy the product from us and we'll split the money. So the organization really, if they don't do a good job in checking in what they ordered, you can have this deception going on so that the receiver can line their pocket with money that really should go to the vendor and that we get the product. So we're being shortchanged. That doesn't always happen, but it happens enough that I think that we need to be very much aware of that. More about that kind of deceitfulness in just a little bit. When the vendor delivers the food products to the loading dock, we need to verify then the accuracy of the items received. Not only did we receive a case of peaches, but it was the correct case of peaches that we ordered. It might have been sliced peaches rather than peach halves. It might have been a grade C peach where we had ordered a grade B peach. And so we need to be very, very careful in terms of making certain that we have received exactly what we have ordered. So, what we're going to do in terms of reviewing the purchasing process, we're going to inspect against the purchase order. We're going to then inspect against the invoice. And this process can be done with the purchase order rather than actually going back and counting the items that were delivered to the loading dock and into the warehouse. The third one is going to then be acceptance or rejection of the order. If there are so many mistakes on the order, we can just reject the whole thing and say, let's start all over again. Then we're going to complete the receiving records. This completion process is going to involve possibly the recording of the number of cases of each of the food items that we got, the price that we paid for them, and any other information that would be appropriate for us to know in the future. This, in terms of the system, is going to be part of our memory in terms of putting it back into the systems approach. And then only then we're going to take the products that we have received and put them into our warehouse. We're going to put them into dry store, or we're going to put them into lower temperature storage as well, which we will talk about right now. So the storage is holding of the foods in the proper conditions to maintain quality until the point of use. And so there are really two primary areas that we're going to do, as I indicated. One is the dry store. What are the conditions that need to be in dry storage to prolong the life of the product, the shelf life of the product? What temperature should the storeroom be? Probably just a little bit warmer than that, somewhere in the neighborhood of 18, 15 to 18. Yes, indeed. Yeah. The other thing that you want to be concerned about in your dry storage is the percent humidity. And so that's going to impact the shelf life of the products as well. And then in terms of low temperature, let's say another comment or two about dry storage. One of the things that we also need to look in terms of the environment of the dry storage area is how secure that storage area is. Security from 2 points of view. One is in terms of security as it relates to vermin, rats and mice and insects and all of those kinds of things that will spread disease. And security from the point of view of security preventing theft. We're going to talk more about preventing theft in just a few minutes. But those are two areas that we really need to be concerned about in terms of security of our storeroom. Then in terms of reduced temperature, in terms of a refrigerator, what would be an appropriate temperature for the storage of fresh fruits and vegetables?
4 degrees Celsius.
It's a good temperature. 3 to 4, 4 being on the upper end. So that is one of the things that we really need to look for and monitor. And so I think it's important that if we have a standard, that our storeroom be at 18 degrees, that we monitor that with a thermometer, and that we have a log that daily we record what the temperature is in that dry store. Likewise in a lower temperature, like in the refrigerator, what is the temperature? And I would look at it more than once a day. I would look at it probably every 3 to 4 hours and record, monitoring what the temperature is, because if the compressor goes out on the refrigerant or the electricity goes off, we'll know about that. But if there is something that occurs that will increase the temperature, we need to know that so we can take corrective action in terms of moving the food to a place that's going to be more conducive to safe storage, safe from a microbiological point of view. And so again, humidity should be somewhere in the neighborhood of 60, 70, or 80%. So it's going to be a higher percentage to maintain the moisture content of fruits and vegetables. Now, we were talking just a moment ago about security in storage. And there are two areas that I think that we need to be concerned about. One is theft. And theft is premeditated burglary. That is, I'm going to break into the storeroom and I am going to take whatever I want without hopefully anyone finding me. The other term that is used is referred in a very gentle way, is inventory shrinkage. Inventory shrinkage is probably a larger problem than theft. Inventory shrinkage is an employee going into the refrigerator and taking a carton of chocolate milk and drinking it in the refrigerator where no one sees them. So you have product that you have purchased that you are not able to sell. So there's a shrinkage of your inventory. There are many examples, but you get the point, I think, with the example that I have given to you. What can we do to control inventory shrinkage? Barrier to entry is one. Not allowing everyone into the refrigerator. There are only certain people who should be authorized to go into the refrigerator, and by doing so, you are minimizing the amount of shrinkage that can happen. There are some other things that you can do. You can put in a television monitor, a camera that's going to see what's happening there. You can lock the door and give the key only to the people who are authorized to get into the door. I'd like to talk about television for just a moment. Do you work in an environment in which there is television monitoring of what you do?
We don't.
You don't have it? Good, good. That is a very routine activity in most of corporate America, that there is a lot of television surveillance. Probably a lot more in the UK. But I did some research and wrote a chapter in a book about security 1,000 years ago. And the thing that I found about barrier to entry, providing security, is that the management philosophy of the supervisor and the director of the department is more critical in keeping people honest and not drinking that carton of chocolate milk than putting up chain link fences and keys and television monitors. The data that I found out was that if you trust your employees by not doing any of this, you get about 4% of your employees that will cheat on you in terms of shrinkage of product. If you put up all of these things, the keys, the television monitor, it's the exact opposite. About 96% of your your employees will do what they can to get what they can from you. So I think that's very important that we really trust our employees and let them know that we trust. And as a result of that, there is a feeling that is engendered in them that, I'm trusted, I have a moral responsibility to be honest, and I will be honest. So I hope that that is something that you would take to heart in terms of developing your own management philosophy as the way in which you're going to treat people. I think it's so critical. So we'll talk a little bit more about this next week when we talk about human resource management. And so, in terms of inventory management, we really do have to provide some way in which to prevent theft and shrinkage. And what I was saying in terms of honesty of employees when we trust them, I fully believe that. But at the same time, I think that we need to understand that we do have an obligation to protect that which is ours. Good to see you. And so we need to put a lock on the door to keep unauthorized people out of the storeroom. But I would not keep a cook out of a storeroom. There are those that do. Personally, my management philosophy would say no. But I would expect that cook to record things that were taken from the storeroom. Inventory management is also going to involve rotation of product. First in, first out. So that means the product that we already have on hand is going to be removed. We're going to put the new product in and put the old product on top so that we're using the first or the oldest product first. We have a regulation at home that we have to date every case of food that we've gotten so that we know when it was received. And so in this way, an inspector can come in and see that we are practicing the management process of first in and first out. Proper storage is another. Proper storage means that the product has to be off the floor. There are standards associated with sanitation that says we can't put food on the floor. It has to be up a certain level. There are too many regulations, I think, in today's world. I think we all face that. But there are some agencies that says that it has to be like this. There are others that say it has to be like this. And the two compete as to who's going to be winning the fight as to the distance that it needs to be off the floor. It needs to be off the floor enough so that you can mop and clean underneath the product, but it doesn't need to be 20 centimeters off the floor. Also, in terms of proper storage, it's going to mean that we are monitoring the temperatures, as we were saying. And so an inspector, when they come to see the level of quality that you have within your organization, they're going to want to see these records of the temperature to see if the food is being stored properly. And the other area of inventory management is that of issuing of the inventory. There are several ways in which inventory can be issued. One is by authorization of the menu. So the menu has standardized recipes that compose the menu. And so anything that appears on a recipe would automatically then be authorized to be removed from the storeroom. But there are other approaches in terms of just a storeroom requisition where everything that is taken from the storeroom is recorded on a requisition. Ideally, that requisition comes a day or two early so that the storeroom clerk can remove those items, put them on a cart so that they are ready to go to the area where the requisition has come from. But there's also direct issue. And direct issue is saying that food coming in from a vendor is not going to go through the storeroom, it's going to go directly to a point of use. Bread, milk, these kinds of things can go as a direct issue. And so items like potato chips and corn chips and so on that would come from the delivery individual would go directly to the cafeteria. And so this man comes every day and restocks. So we never have to maintain an inventory. They're maintaining the inventory for us, assuring that the product is rotated and is always the freshest possible. The bread man will take away day-old bread, give us credit for that, and then replace that day-old bread with fresh bread. This is an area where you really need to check the integrity of that individual to make certain that they are indeed giving you credit for what they have taken, or they may give you credit for only half that they've taken, so you pay for the rest of it. So you really need to monitor what is going on as far as these direct issues are concerned. I've been looking at the wrong slide. That's what we were just talking about. Sorry. So direct issue and a storeroom issue. We also need to have in our storeroom some records. Records that provide information about the amount of food and supplies that we have on stock. We need to use that information also to determine how much product we need. We need this data for cost control and for cost accounting. And this last one I dislike very much, and so I put it in brackets. And it says that it will prevent theft and pilferage or shrinkage. I don't know that the recording of any information is going to prevent theft and shrinkage. If you haven't done an adequate job in protecting your inventory to begin with, whatever method of inventory controls and records you have is not going to prevent shrinkage. Management philosophy is going to do that, I think, more than anything else. But there are many who say that inventory theft and pilferage can be reduced by having a particular set of records that tells you at any time what is in the storeroom. And so you can tell then, after the fact, that some of the inventory has been taken. But it hasn't controlled it, it's just telling you that some of it's gone. Now, part of that discrepancy can come from failure to record food that was removed from the inventory that should have been removed, but it just wasn't written down. People get lazy and they don't do everything that they should do. And so it probably is a better recognition of laziness than the fact that product was stolen. So don't put a lot of stock or belief in the fact that an inventory record system is going to prevent theft and shrinkage. But there are some things that we need to, some things that we need to do to control our inventories in terms of the approach that we take. There are two that we could use. One is a physical inventory, and that is where we actually go and count what is on hand. The second approach is perpetual inventory, where we are spending a great deal of time recording what is coming in, what the price we paid for it, how much we have issued, and a column that tells us our current amount of product on hand. That is a perpetual inventory system. And it is this perpetual inventory system that they say will help to prevent theft and pilferage. No, I don't think so. So let's take a look at the physical inventory system. Physical inventory system is a periodic or monthly counting and recording of the products that we have on hand in all of the storage areas, with the exception of all of those direct issues that have come in, the bread and the chips and that sort of thing. That is just going straight into the service areas, and so we don't count that inventory. We account for it in the fact that it came in today, and we count it as a direct issue to the place that it has gone. And so we use that for cost accounting in terms of this is the amount of food that we used today. So this count then can be used to calculate the value of the inventory that we have on hand. There is a formula that I would like for you to know. It's a very easy formula. But this will tell you what your food usage is for an accounting period, for the month of February, for example. What we're going to do is to take the beginning inventory. That's the amount of food that we have in our storeroom on the first day of February or the last day of January. And we're going to add to that all of the food that we purchased during the month of February. So those are our purchases. And then we're going to subtract on February 29 this year what our inventory is. And so beginning inventory plus purchases minus the ending inventory is going to be our food usage. Now, we're going to do this calculation for every item that we have in our storeroom. So if we have tomatoes in a 3-liter can and in a 250 milliliter can, are those two equivalent? They are not. Did you pay the same price for them? No, you did not. So you've got to look at the inventory of the 3-liter can and the inventory of the 250 milliliter can so that they are completely separate but individual. So you're going to have two counts that you make, the 3-liter and the 250.
Does the law oblige you to do this inventory?
I didn't understand the first part, I'm sorry.
The law.
Oh, the law?
Has in your country oblige you to do this
No.
for your own?
There is no law that says that you have to use one system over another in the U.S. The decision is more of a practical one in terms of how long it takes to do the work associated with the inventory system. One of the things that I wish that I could do is to take you to Loma Linda and see the inventory system that we have. It's computer-based, and so as a result of that, we know what the beginning inventory is. We know what our purchases have been. We know what the ending inventory is at the end of the month, and so it will calculate each of these items separately, independently, and tell us the number of cases and units, cans, within the case, so that we know the volume of food that we have used. That does nothing in terms of telling us how much we have spent in food. And so we've got to do then a separate operation, again, for each individual inventory item, and that is, what is the price of that product? Prices are not constant in the U.S. Are they constant here? They are always changing. So how do you value the inventory? And that's what we're talking about here. The second method of valuation of food is to calculate the cost of all foods issued from the inventory plus your direct issues for the time period. So if we have a perpetual inventory system, we can use the beginning inventory plus purchases minus the ending inventory to give us what our total is. Or we can calculate our cost by looking at all of the foods issued from inventory plus our direct stores or direct issues. But again, I'm coming back to the question, in either of these, which price do we use in valuing the inventory? If we use a rotation policy of first in, first out, that's going to say to me, as I evaluate it, that most of the inventory that I have is most recent. And so I would use then the most recent price that I paid for all of these products to determine the total value of those products. Does that make any sense? I think there...
But we have a minus and a cost or a plus if you do like this.
If you have a minus on the cost, that tells me that you have more, that you have used more product than what you received or had on hand. So you've got to find out what happened as far as the data that you're using so that you don't get a negative. It's going to be an indication of an error. But your cost is going to be probably the cost associated with the last purchase of that product that you have made. If we use the beginning price, that is going to be a representation of what the price was a month ago. But if we use the current price, we can say that is the current market value of that product. It may have gone up, it may have gone down. But in any way, what price that you paid for it last is probably the best representation of current market value. And so it's probably better to look at it in terms of current market value. There are others who will make an equally valid assumption that what they will do is, rather than using the first in price or the last in price, they will do a weighted average of all of the purchases and use that price. That's too much work. I think that we need to choose one of the three methods. It really doesn't matter in the long run, because as we look at it over a year, it's probably going to average out. But using the current price is probably the better way to go. So we're just talking about here inventory valuation methods of last in, first out, or first in, first out. Now, the second approach, we've been talking now about the physical inventory approach. Now, the second approach is referred to as the perpetual inventory. And the perpetual inventory is a consistent record of additions and withdrawals from the inventory itself. And so ideally, the record will provide a current level of inventory for every item that you have in your storeroom. And so you can use this information then to determine how much you need to order. Maybe, maybe not. Fast-moving items like bread and milk, produce are not placed in inventory, but are recorded as received and issued in the same day. Direct issue is the way that it's handled. But in the perpetual inventory system, annual or semi-annual physical inventory counts are going to be done to reconcile the difference between what the records say and what is actually on inventory. Now, that's going to not tell us that we've had shrinkage. It's just going to tell us that we've had some errors. And one of the errors may be shrinkage or theft.